What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Pure Evil MMA. I got our next guest of the night, or our guest of the night, Calen Born, who's going to be fighting on Shamrock FC 285 coming up March 11th. We got to talk with a lot of fighters on this card, man, and it's going to be on flowcombat.com. It is absolutely stacked with a bunch of up-and-comers. What's going on, Caleb? Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So what are you doing to get ready for this fight, man? Who are you training with? You know, where are you from? What gym are you at?
I've been training under world champion kickboxer master Dwayne Lewis here in Lawrence. We train out of the Haskell Kickboxing Club. We got a full-size ring, a bunch of tie bags, and I have a bunch of really good training partners that I train with out there. I also instruct at Lawrence Elite Wrestling. We have a BJJ grappling and judo program, as well as a wrestling program out there. I really do enjoy cross training. I obviously think it's important to get good looks from other people from other gyms. So I've done some cross training with Shannon Woodward and Austin Ford as well. Both those guys are superb coaches. For me, I usually haven't done a lot of mitts training. Usually I'm more into a lot of live work with sparring and wrestling and whether it be kickboxing or BJJ. But I've done some mitt work with Eric Riley, who's the head boxing coach here at Haskell, and he's really helped me, sharpen my stuff up in terms of, protecting myself and being a little bit more aggressive.
So you got this upcoming fight against Stephen Thompson, and guys, don't flip out. It's not Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. He's not fighting at Shamrock FC. Actually, man, what do you know about your opponent? Anything that you can share with us?
Actually, I think they last week they switched up my opponent. It's going to be Garrett Nilgez.
Okay,
that was like a last minute thing because Stephen actually got medically suspended, I believe, at one of the last MMA events a couple weeks ago, which was unfortunate and kind of unexpected, obviously. I know that, my opponent's been, training and has been, expecting to take a fight, and this fight against me kind of fell into his lap. So he was more than willing to accept it. For me, in terms of switching things up, I already had a set goal of, things I want to accomplish in my camp. And I had a game plan to do that, and I've been trying to execute that. So whoever I'm fighting hasn't really changed what I'm doing or what I'm going to do.
Because sometimes it could be an advantage for our listeners out there that aren't too familiar. Sometimes it could be an advantage for you, and sometimes not. Like sometimes if you're training for your other opponent so hard, trying to get used to his style, and then here comes another guy with a completely different, background and everything. It can be a little confusing.
Yeah, you have to obviously, be careful with which fights you take, and based on how styles match up and whatnot. If you're going to be fighting an NCAA wrestling champion, and you've been training for him for 2 months in camp, and 2 weeks before they switch it to a karate style point fighter, that's obviously going to be a big change. I'm really a firm believer in visualization and seeing kind of the fight beforehand and how it's going to play out. Obviously, once you get in there and the cage door shuts, anything can happen. But I'm a firm believer in humans are creatures of habit and studying people's habits and whether that's on film or during the fight in the cage, and being able to capitalize on that. It's pretty much all on the same.
So how do you visually see it going now? I mean, you got this fighter 2 weeks notice. You're kind of just learning about him. So what was the approach to this? I mean, I'll ask you a two-part question here, so it's not too crazy. What do you think your approach is for this fight, and how do you see it playing out? Without giving too much away, obviously.
For me, based on all of my past fights, I do a pretty good job of protecting myself. I'm kind of in it for the long haul kind of thing. So You don't really see me going out there and brawling or anything like that. But with that being said, almost all my fights end in me putting hands on them falling down, and then me taking advantage of them not quite being with us. Obviously, submissions are a lot easier when people are a little punch drunk. So I'm obviously a firm believer in using a submission to finish fight, just because it's one of the easier methods in terms of having to like pound your fist and risk breaking your hand or
Yeah.
something like that. With this being a professional bout, being able to use elbows and stuff is obviously something that one should consider both defending and using. So and arguably that makes the ground game change, and in my eyes makes it a little bit easier to finish people rather than having to punch them out.
So my next question for you, man. Of course, we're only a couple days away. It's 11 o'clock in the morning. Well, what's your day plan look like? We're getting close to the fight. I mean, you're about to head out to the gym. You were just telling me. What's your week look like here?
Yeah, so yesterday I had some good sparring with some of my normal partners. Obviously, you kind of get nervous, leading up to the fight in terms of like getting injured. Branching out and fighting different new people a week out sometimes can make you, anxious, if you will. So I did some pretty hard kickboxing sparring yesterday, and then we did some grappling as well. And then today I'll be headed out to Brass Boxing to do some one-on-one training with Austin Ford. I'll be coming back and doing some BJJ training at my home school, Lawrence Elite Wrestling. And immediately following my BJJ practice at 5, we'll be doing kids wrestling from 6:30 to 8:30. And we have about, like I said, about 45 kids that are training for the state tournament right now. So not only am I training for a fight on the 11th, but I do believe that there are districts that decide whether or not they get to go to state is on the 11th. So it's kind of cool that the whole room's kind of peaking at the same time, which is a fun thing to be a part of.
I gotta ask you, brother. I mean, that's a lot of kids to be watching over. So who's in charge of it? You, and who else is trying to keep everyone
So I
focused?
have one of my sponsors actually, Roger Fincher. He's an attorney and one of the main cogs in one of the high schools, Lawrence Free State, their wrestling program. He's a great wrestling coach, but has essentially opened up a commercial space and like walled it with awesome brand new wrestling mats. It's one of the biggest rooms around. Obviously, the fact that we can hold that many kids in a practice should
Yeah.
speak to like the size of the room.
Hmm.
Which once again, like for me as a training facility in MMA is awesome. When guys come to cross train and stuff, they're always like, man, this is really cool. So it's like I said, it's a really good opportunity for me. I really enjoy interacting with the kids. I was the head instructor at KU Brazilian Jiu Jitsu for a while. I stepped down just recently to kind of focus back on my professional career, and I'm also focusing on the Lawrence Elite Wrestling program as well. And you can only have so many irons in the fire at once, and
Yeah.
obviously being a professional mixed martial artist is a pretty large iron. So.
So another thing I gotta ask you, since you're in that position, kind of a unique question. What do you think's the biggest change from when you were growing up as a kid and learning about the sport to now? I mean, now it's more mixed martial arts, so
Yeah,
you got to
so
learn a couple of different
my
things.
first pay-per-view buy, Tito Ortiz, Chuck Liddell 2. You know, so that and I had watched obviously, the first UFCs on tape and stuff like that, and that was all like good and well. I played rugby and I played football for a really long time, and I was pretty hard on my body through that stuff. So obviously, my family has been a little less than apt or a little less than supportive sometimes to see me climbing in the cage to bang it out. But this is my 13th time in the cage. I have plenty of experience. I've been kickboxing for 10 years. I've been wrestling for 15 and doing judo for 10 years. I had the experience. Eventually, they got to trust you kind of thing. And I feel the support now of them, which for me, having, my family members or my significant other in my corner and, supporting me is a huge help. Obviously everyone's worried about their health,
Oh, you
but
have your girl in your corner?
Well, in my not
Or
in my corner, in my
okay, okay.
figurative corner, not my literal corner.
I
I'm
didn't
not
know if
one
it
of
was
those
like
guys, man. I got I got professional boxing and kickboxing trainers in my corner.
well, so,
They're cheering from
sometimes
the
like
stands.
Sam Alvey, he has his girl in the corner. We do see it sometimes, but usually not a
Yeah,
lot. You know.
yeah. I'll be real. Uh, I'm a pretty intense guy. Most guys that know me, in the week of, some kind of hot to handle sometimes, and obviously really appreciate my family standing by me and dealing with some, whether it be the weight cut or whatever. I'm not cutting any weight this time because we're fighting at a catch weight, but whenever I am cutting weight, I know I can kind of be a bear, and just the lead up to going in and absolutely destroying someone in the cage. Obviously, there's some buildup there that needs to be dealt with days before. So, there's a whole lot that goes into it, and they kind of, like it or not, have to be a part of it.
So before we round this interview off, I got to ask another thing. Before we end on the note of your fight, you were talking about cross training at the beginning of the interview, and if we got a lot of listeners all over the world, from Brazil to Canada to France, and a lot of amateur fighters in those areas that listen in. When you talk about cross training, sometimes gyms they get angry with you if you leave them. What do you think's the best way of going about cross training?
You can't drink the Kool-Aid, man. Like, if your gym owner or your teacher saying, like, put the blinders on, like, focus on this style, there's a couple things. Obviously my firm belief, to be a professional mixed martial artist or an amateur mixed martial artist, you got to have a firm root in a traditional martial art, whether that be karate, wrestling, jujitsu, judo. So with that being said, do you need to start at a gym and stay there, for a while until you have completed the system and or know the system almost inside and out? Yeah, and then you can grow and start to cross train. How long does that take? Who knows? Eventually, you can't be the biggest fish in the smallest pond. You got to be going and seeing other gyms. You got to be fighting other warm bodies. It's just a part of it. And anyone who tells you differently just wants to keep your money, and you got to be careful about that. Because it's all about the money in the end.
Well, you see it like as the fighters, advance and they have to fight, people that are pretty much tied with them in the skill level. Sometimes it's smart to make some changes here and there, and you don't necessarily have to leave the gym. But sometimes people get upset even if you want to cross train, and it kind of brings like a weird situation about. So I think you worded that perfectly. Of course, you got this fight coming up. You were just saying you don't have to do the weight cut, man. So that's kind of an advantage too. I mean, how are you feeling about all of that?
Yeah, obviously, when I was talking with my opponent before, because I actually, friends with him on Facebook, and we hit each other up. And I was like, hey, man, like, what's up? What's your weight at? And, he's right at where we're fighting 180, and so am I. And I was like, 2 weeks out, why don't, you and I just focus on getting our cardio up, and since we're both at the same weight anyways right now, why not be fresh and show our best, technique and our best, skill, instead of worrying about not feeling good or having some disaster like they had this past weekend at the UFC, some crazy stuff like that. I'm all about being healthy and just throwing down at 100%. So
My last question to you before we let you go today. You just brought it up. UFC 209, man. What did you think about that main event? I'm trying to ask all the fighters what their take was. What is it? What was
yeah,
your
for
take on it?
sure. I watched it. I thought it was great. I know a lot of people, maybe disagree with what happened, but you gotta look at the stats. One, the judges are a little bit more keyed in with what actually is being scored on. I mean, Tyrone had a knockdown, he had a takedown, and he landed more strikes. Like, even though it was only one, and he was more accurate. So it's like, based on all that criteria, on top of, let's even go back to Pride rules, damage done. I mean, I like check, 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 check. To me, it's a no brainer. On top of whether or not you agree with it, you got to beat the champion or whatever. You got to beat the champion, man. And like, just standing in the middle of the octagon point fighting, that's not the spirit of martial arts. Like, that's the spirit of winning trophies. That's not the spirit of holding that strap, though.
I really appreciate your insight on this. What we like to do at this point in our interview, Caleb, is I hand the imaginary microphone over to you. If you got sponsors, any shout outs, and definitely your social media tags. And quickly, you got to leave it off with what everybody can expect come March 11th on Flow Combat for Shamrock FC 285.
Yeah, I'm totally excited. The show that I'm a part of, obviously, is great production. They run super smooth. They always have great fights. My sponsors, Rod Rock Chiropractic, Templar Masonry, and U Build Kansas City, and Roger Fincher and Lawrence Elite, Haskell Boxing, Brass Boxing, Shannon Woodward out in Topeka. I could go on and on. Obviously, my family's there with me.
Because your sponsors are so important.
Yeah, they really do make the world go round. Like I said, and not only monetarily, but like my fans and stuff who bought tickets. I sold the whole section. I've sometimes you sit at home and you're like, I don't really have any friends. I'm busy. Everyone's busy. No one can do anything. And then an event like this comes around and you see everyone kind of come out of the woodwork. And supports you, and you see how large that your family is, and it makes your heart swell, and you can't thank those people enough. So and guys like you for making it go around and getting more and more publicity for the sport, man. It's a hard sport to grow sometimes because people don't quite understand it. So the more exposure that the sport sees, the better.
Well, you kind of brushed on it. I mean, people are starting to understand the sport a little more, have a little more respect towards it. So the least I can do as a media member is get you guys on the show while I'm talking about fighting and everything. So I got to thank you guys and Shamrock FC, man. You guys all put on a great show. We're looking forward to it. Where can everybody find you on social media, Caleb?
You can find me at calenborn.com. So that's at CALENBORN.com, or not.com, just on Facebook. Hit me up. I'm there. I usually try to respond. Obviously, with social media and the way it is, it's been interesting. I'm just a martial artist, man, that likes to compete, and I've had more and more people, hitting me up and wanting to know what's going on, and it's really cool to just hear people's stories and trade stories and interact and network with everyone in the community. It's pretty cool.
So do you have Twitter at all or Instagram?
Yeah, I think I'm at Calen Born, or at Born Calen. Actually, they switched it around. So at BORNCALEN. That would be my Twitter. But yeah, like I said, I'm pretty good with Facebook. I'm on there a lot, trying to communicate with people at other gyms and stuff like that. So I try to keep my network strong on places to train. So if anyone wants to come train with me, no matter where you're at, I promise we'll set you up with some cool gyms and a place to stay.
Calen, thank you so much for coming on Pure Evil MMA. Best of skill come March 11th. We'll all be tuning in for Shamrock FC 285. Best of luck.
Hey, thank you, man. Bye-bye.
DJ Payne 1.